Hi there, I'm Sipo from Robeco's Global Multi-Thematic Strategy. Today we're talking all things water. So water demand already vastly outstrips water supply, and that gap is only expected to widen, driven by population growth, higher per capita water consumption, and of course climate change. So on this topic, I'm really happy to be joined by Almasa today, who's our water thought leader. And maybe you can help us understand a bit more what's going on in your neck of the woods. So yeah.
Sure. There are several ways we could actually tackle the water topic, but maybe we should start big picture and look at water infrastructure first. There are significant investment needs when it comes to water infrastructure in both developed and developing countries. Often it is to deal with water quality, to deal with water losses, and also with changing amounts of water in the system, being too much water or too little water that is caused by floods and droughts. If we look more specifically at developed markets, spendings are mostly focused on replacing the pipelines, on reducing leakages, also on rolling out smart meters. While for developing markets, here, even though drinking water penetration rates are actually quite high, they are often in the rates of 90%, especially in urban areas. Where the gap really needs to be closed is on the wastewater treatment. So often less than half of the sewage is actually treated, which of course causes significant health risks, but also environmental and economic consequences.
Super fascinating stuff. I think on the topic of developed versus developing markets, I think a data point that always kind of shocks me is that in developing countries, 80% of water demand is from agricultural uses, whereas in developed markets, 50% of water demand comes from industrial applications. So maybe you could touch a little bit on the main sort of culprits on the industrial side?
Sure. Usually when we think of water-intensive industries, we tend to think of textile, mining, pulp and paper. But actually biotech, pharma, and also semiconductor manufacturing are very water-intensive, especially because they require a lot of ultra-pure water in their processes. And to produce ultra-pure water, you actually need even a larger amount of regular water. And the processes requires purification and bringing the contaminants level to a very low level. When it comes to AI, sometimes we do not think of the water footprint, but it is actually considerably higher than we would expect. If we look at the average semiconductor fabrication plant, usually the amount of water that is consumed by such a plant is 10 to 20 million of liters per day. And looking at the data center cooling systems, there as well, we would have 1 to 5 million liters per day and per site. So it is really significant. Of course, this water can be reused, but further innovation and investments in that area will come as well.
Okay, super interesting. So there's obviously a lot of competing, let's say, uses for the water that we have on the planet. Maybe we could touch on maybe the more human side of things, so talk on regulation. So obviously a lot of focus on making sure what we consume as water is safe to drink. So what's happening on the regulatory front?
Sure. One of the most talked about contaminant is PFAS, which is also called forever chemicals. Forever because it doesn't break down easily in nature nor in the human body, and it is linked to very serious health risks. In Europe, we have tightening limits when it comes to PFAS, and in the US, at the moment, it's a bit delayed because of the new administration, but the topic is still relevant, and we will see, of course, growing demand for testing equipment, but also for removal technologies going forward. One challenge is dealing with what is the residual. So basically removing the PFAS from the waters is not that complicated, but then we are left with a contaminant that needs to be disposed of in a safe way, and that is more challenging, and there is still innovation coming in the space.